Hello, everyone. We are going to have a live with CCO tonight. It's number 89. And I know I say this every time. We have a fabulous topic. And I'm seeing everybody filter in. Hello. And oh, Carmen, great to see you. Also, I'm recognizing names. That's fabulous. All right. You guys may or may not be aware of who the OIG is and what their role is with medical coding. I'm going to give you some background. I'm going to let you see why we have to be familiar with what the OIG does. And it's important in your role to stay on top of what they're doing. And I'm going to show you why and how you can check in with them. This is going to allow you to be on the cusp of what's happening. Um, I'm going to get some links as well in this slide deck that are going to be important. I would put that in a safe place so that you can go in and check in with them often. This is going to set you a cut above if you stay on top of what OIG is doing. So let's talk about who they are and what their role is and the purpose of OIG. OIG stands for Office of Inspector General. Now, this is not just really one office that the government has. It's pretty multifaceted. Started back in 76, and what they wanted to do was find waste, and then it became a kind of a fraud and abuse thing. But waste, how were we wasting the resources that we've got in the government as far as funds are concerned, and save money so that we can take care of more people in not just the medical field, but predominantly we're talking about Medicare and Medicaid, so CMS and HHS. Now, they are also, again, the forerunners of investigating and making sure everything goes smooth with CMS and HHS. Now, CMS is going to cover Medicare and HHS covers Medicaid. There is a lot of people in OIG, multifaceted. They have different arenas that they specialize in, and we'll go over that in a moment as well. Uh, but most of the resources go towards what's Medicare doing and what's Medicaid doing, and how can we uh, uh, work these departments smoothly and get rid of waste and look at fraud and abuse. Now, they're not 100% over fraud and abuse, but it's a big component of it. They have a fact sheet. Now, I'm going to give you a link at the end in the resource page on the slide that's going to tell you how to pull the um, OIG fact sheet. But some highlights that I was able to abstract from that is that them saying what they do. What is the purpose of OIG? And that is the way to find that out is kind of divided up. Well, what do you do? And they are very heavy in data analytics. If you're in risk adjustment, you're very familiar with data, abstracting data and why we abstract data. And then if you are on the business side of medicine, data and the analytics that go with that is pretty key to what you'll be working in on a regular basis. They also go into criminal, civil, and administrative investigations. Don't forget, the primary goal is to look for waste, but it has expanded and they're looking at fraud and abuse as well now. They have a lot of specialists, not just in the medical field, but in analytics, in IT. It's vast, and again, it's multifaceted. They even go into cybersecurity because we want to make sure that the data that's being abstracted and obtained is secure, as well as all the entities that they're overseeing or looking at is secure in their data. Well, a few examples of what they found in last year would be they expected to recover $2.73 billion in waste. And then they had, let's see, I'm looking on the bigger screen here. They had criminal action against 710 entities, individuals or entities. And this, you may think these are large entities like major hospital systems and stuff. No, that doesn't always um, ring true. There are individual practices that they find this in, as well as large entities. There was exclusions. It said for individual and entities from federal healthcare programs, federally funded, 2,332, and there was civil actions against 736 individuals or entities. So what's included? They did oversight for, and look in the next graphic here, public health, science and regulatory agencies, human service agencies, IHS, health insurance marketplaces. And then it also looked at oversight in Medicare, all of your Medicares, both A, B, C, and D, and Medicaid, but because again, they're all federally funded as well. And the marketplace is I when you go back to our topic, and the title of today's presentation is, what does that have to do with coding? It has everything to do with coding, because how did they go in and find this data? Well, they run reports. How do they run the reports? Based on the codes. Because what do you hear me say all the time? We code for statistical purposes. It happens to be a convenient way to get paid. We They track all of this information based on the codes that you translate the documentation into. So again, it is very heavy laden in our world as a coders and billers. Now they have um, a what do I call it? It's just the work plan, the OIG work plan. It's a document that they put out that tells what their focus is going to be on. They have a heads up every year. So one year the focus may be we're going to look at outliers for modifier 25, or we're going to look at end-stage renal disease patients and the expenses that are incurred for end-stage renal disease, or they may look at obesity and the long-term effects of obesity and treatments for obesity and how that is working. And again, what are they looking for first? Waste. And then they start looking for all those other items that we mentioned. Let's look at this real quick and define what the work plan is. If you don't look at anything else that the OIG offers free to the public to look at, you want to stay on top of the work plan. That way, you're able to see what is their focus. And if they're focusing on something, there's got to be a reason why. They've indicated that there's a problem. So the various projects are going to be, let's see if this one stated it, done every fiscal year. And they are going to look at the department is going to look at Medicaid, Medicare, and they also look at the CDC, the NIH, which is National Institute of Health. They also look at ACF, which is the Administration for Children and Families, and the Administration of Community Living, which is ACLs. If you weren't aware, these are all areas that you could get involved in your career. So I just spoke on a panel for DeVry, and several of those people are getting ready to get their RHIA they were talking about, where's the possibilities for us to be able to get positions, and these are entities you might look into. So a little side note there. The work plan is always going to be related to issues that cut across departmental programs. They're not going to just focus down on one department, and it's going to be at the state and federal level. That's important to understand. So I've got an example that I'm going to show you of an MA plan investigation. And then while I was looking at that, I came across one for Missouri, which again, I took a moment to read that because I'm back home in Missouri now from Texas. It could be dental. It may have a plan focus on uh, dental care, or something else. It's pretty vast what they look at. And let's see. Oh, uh, the last statement here, look where it says some work plan items reflect work that is statutorily required. That's important to know as well. All right, now here are the breakdowns of what OIG does. And the takeaway from this slide uh, is not just what they do, but how often the new information comes out. So, the official website, you can go to that daily and see what's happening. This is going to have both the regular OIG reports, and it's going to tell you what they did. Why not only what they found, but what enforcement actions were taken. And there's a lot of compliance resources. So when they run a report and they have an investigation and they have findings, they will tell you how not to make the same mistake that the other entity did. Very, very important when you're, especially in your if you're in a leadership role, to be on top of this. This isn't just for compliance. This is also for the everyday coder to stay on top of what's happening in our arena. So the official website, you can check on that daily. Information is updated often. Then the work plan that I told you about, that comes out every month. And it also is going to talk about what they are looking at, what their plans are, the audits that they plan to do, what they found, and what they're looking at or what's underway at this time. And again, what's the benefit of that? You can see what their focus is. If they are having problems, if there's waste, if there's fraud, if there's abuse, they're going to find it, and then you need to update your skill set and knowledge in that area to make sure that whoever your employer is doesn't fall into the same problem. uh, some of this stuff is unintentional and it's out of ignorance, but we are still held to yeah, ignorance is not an excuse. We have to be on top of it. We're the professionals. And so that's why this resource is valuable. The top unimplemented recommendations that comes out every fall, and this is a list of recommendations that are going to affect cost savings, the program effectiveness, and public health and safety. It isn't just fraud and abuse or waste that happens with modifier 25 usage. No, we're talking about things even, for example, if escape routes, if you have a live shooter in a health facility or environment, or uh, maybe you have a data breach in the entity where you're at, and what could be lost in information, what are the steps to take if you identify that having happened, and then they give you resources. So again, I can't even touch all the really cool things that even off the top of my head that they are exposed to. But the beauty is that you can go into the work plan and you can look at the archive and go way back and see what has been done this time last year, 5 years ago. And you can see where the key problem areas have been, how they've been remedied or corrected, what was done, the resources, if you're having issues at this time, all the work's been done for you. And make sure that your office or your entity doesn't fall into traps that maybe somebody else has had. So again, the top unimplemented recommendations is comes out every fall, and when the OIG sees, for example, waste, they have a recommendation. They bring in the experts. They figure out a way. This is how we feel would fix this and cause less waste. And then at that time it's unimplemented. But then if it's implemented, then they can tell you the results of that as well. There's also a semi-annual report that goes to Congress. You hear them talking about that sometimes in the news. This is given to them every fall and spring. And again, you hear rumors and about this big lawsuit or maybe like I'd mentioned before, a data breach. That stuff all gets reported, and uh, they keep the people who are running Medicare and Medicaid, the oversight committees and stuff, in tune and updated on what's happening. The top management performance and challenges facing HHS comes out every November. It's very telling. And then the strategic plan comes out every 5 years. So those archives that I was telling you about, you can go back and say, and look 10 years ago, did the strategic plan that they implement work? What did they learn? And were there still gaps in what they looked at? Now, how do they choose what they're going to have their focus on? They tell you in their work plan. It's listed out as mandatory requirements for the OIG's reviews. There's laws, regulations, and directives that they start with, and then requests are made. People submit, entities submit issues that they're having to Congress and HHS management. They have the Office of Management and Budget. They all get together and they put in requests and say, for example, we're having problems with the rising cost of end-stage renal disease patients. And so then they say, okay, then we will set parameters and we'll investigate the issue, and we'll move forward and set a plan out for everybody. Sarah says they also help organizations implement compliance plan and preventing uh, sentinel events. That is absolutely right. Now, I would have to say that one of the underdeserved, I don't wanna say it wrong. One of the things that OIG does that a lot of people don't think about is the education that they offer. And if you decide that you are interested in compliance, which I'm very interested in compliance, at one time, I thought that's what I wanted to do, was specialize in compliance, be a compliance officer. And so I did a lot of research, and you get real up close and friendly with OIG, and constantly looking at what uh, information that they have available to you. And I don't know any other way to say it, is that they just make you smarter. You get the pulse of what's happening if you stay on top of what OIG is doing, because you can go back and again research the archives. You can see where they've identified issues and problems, not just them, but these other entities that bring up problems that they see, especially with budget. So thanks for saying that, Sarah. Absolutely. If you are an entity and are getting involved with uh, compliance, then OIG is your friend. Let's see, moving on, top management and performance challenges facing HHS. Again, Health Human Services, you know that there's constantly fires that they're trying to put out. Uh, and um, can you imagine what it was like to have to go through the major changes that we went through recently? Then we also have a work performed by other oversight organizations, management's actions to implement OIG recommendations from previous reviews, and again, potential for positive impact. So they're tracking everything. So they're getting the pulse of what's happened in the past, what worked to correct any issues that came up. What's the potential for problems in the future? What is an issue presently that entities are struggling with? And then looking forward as well. After the pandemic, can you imagine what information that we were able to glean from how that was handled, uh, and how it will impact the way medicine is done is in the future? For example, telehealth. There's a lot of changes that were made because of that, and now we're starting to get the statistics of how helpful telehealth is. And then the OIG will come in and give all those recommendations and resources based on the data and the statistics that they found. Now, in addition, they're going to be working on projects, and they do audits, reviews, and reports. They have a work portfolio that you're able to look at, and they have all the legal and investigative activities that are happening uh, on any project that's being worked on. And again, retrospectively, you can go back and look at those. There are links that you'll be able to get that's at the resource page, but they have investigating fraud, waste, and abuse. What did they start out doing? They were looking for waste. How can we save money? Because if we save money, we'll be able to develop resources, more resources to help the health of our communities and societies. And then it got into fraud and abuse. Facilitating compliance in healthcare industry, just like Sarah said, they are they know everything that's happening with compliance, and excluding bad actors from participating in federal healthcare programs. So if you have a provider or even an entity that is a poor performer, meaning that they are not providing the services at a level that is a standard, or they're involved with fraud, abuse, or just waste, then they're going to be identified, and everybody will know about it. You don't want to get on the bad side of the OIG. Here is one of the investigations that I pulled out for, and kind of how they do these in the reports. Right after I get done with this, I'm going to just show you what the report looks like. So easy to follow. This particular audit was MA plans, and they were looking at a compliance audit of specific diagnoses that Cigna Health, Spring Life, and Health Insurance Company Inc. submitted to CMS. What does that tell you? You, as a coder or in the coding world, this is all the data that you're putting in. Uh, why do we want to make sure we code to the highest specificity? Because these guys, these investigators are coming in and looking, and they want to make sure um, that if you have a large community of diabetics, that their diagnoses, if they have complications, are being captured, because that community may need more resources, and it's up to them to make sure those resources are available in that community. If you don't have a high prevalence of diabetes with complications, then we'll pull those resources someplace else. It'd be wasteful for us to send uh, in a bunch of providers and implement dialysis clinics in a community when there is very few diabetic or end-stage renal disease patients in that vicinity. That it would be wasteful, right? But if they go in and identify in another area, a community where they have one dialysis clinic and it's overwhelmed, that they need three more, then again, they will identify that. They'll set in an action plan and get the resources available to make sure it happens. But how are they going to know that if you're not coding in stage renal disease correctly, and the complications that are involved? And social determinations of health are going to be very impactful as well in the future for OIG, as they look at the cost and burden on patients and providers. Now, again, this was the report. There's a completed report and a report brief, kind of an overview. So, what did they find? Well, they first we would need to know how they did the audit itself. They took 300 unique enrollee years with high risk diagnosis codes. That means those diagnosis codes, the high risk ones will be people with amputations, people with complications to their diabetes, end stage renal disease, um, cancers that have metastasized. And they went to Cigna, and they noticed that Cigna received higher payments in 2016 through 2017. Statistically, how do they know that? Because these codes were submitted, and so they got more money. Why? Why were they above other entities and payers? They limited the review to a portion of payments that were associated with the high risk diagnosis codes and totaled $720,000, 395. Okay, now what did they find? They they narrowed down the focus, who they were investigating, what they were going to investigate, and how they were going to go about doing the investigation. Then what did they find? They had 9 high-risk groups covered by the audit, meaning, in my opinion, that says that they took things like end-stage renal disease, cancers that have metastasized, diabetics with multiple complications, for example. And then they looked at the codes that were submitted for CMS, risk adjustment programs, and that didn't comply with the federal requirements. Now, what that would mean would be that they were stating that a patient was in stage renal disease um, without being on dialysis. And or how many times did you code an N18.5 that was and they were on dialysis? Well, no, they're an N18.6 and vice versa, things like that. And because it's going to be, if they're going to pay out more if you're an N18.6 than you are if you're an N18.5 because you're on dialysis. Then let's see, they looked at specific 200 of the 300 sample enrolled years, and the medical records that Cigna provided did not support the diagnosis code and resulted in $468,000 in overpayments. Uh, that's wasteful, and it could have been fraud and abuse. So they demonstrated the errors were found in the sample, the signal policies and procedures to prevent, detect, and correct the noncompliance with the CMS program. So they identified all of it. And then they went in and showed how to improve. So on the basis of the sample they stated, we estimated that Cigna received at least 24 million in overpayment for uh, the years 2016 through 2017. So they took a sample. They took a little, think of it this way in the medical nurse. They took a little biopsy of a particular area and they found this much, um, uh, uh, this many errors. And so then they said, if this is true, if A is true, then we look at all of Cigna, then B must be true. 6 million. So if they're getting, 45, 4,000 or almost 500,000 in overpayment, then overall, uh, that's going to equal up to about $6 million or over $6 million. That's impactful. And that's just Cigna. If Cigna's doing it, well, all the others are too, right? So it isn't that they're going to necessarily come down on Cigna. Yes, they will in the long run. However, the key that OIG has is they identified the error, or they identified a study. They proposed how they were going to do the study. They did the study, they got the results, then they tell you how to fix it. Don't let anybody else make this mistake. That's what's so brilliant about the OIG. Sarah made a comment. Let's see. Are are there auditing worksheets that classify diagnoses into complexity categories, acute, complicated? And I have providers asking how auditors can test the complexity during an audit, saying invalid. Yes, there are. I think, Sarah, what I would do is again, you could go out to OIG and you could look in their work plan and see what they did to investigate. Uh, but there are other that do that. Ultimately, what they do is they hire clinicians as auditors and CDI specialists that go in and look at all the documentation. So it's not like they just look at a 1500 form. No, they look at everything for the patient, and excuse me, over a whole year, and verify um, these scenarios. But Sarah, I can help you with that. Feel free to send a note into helpdesk@cco.us, and or make a note in the club if you're part of our club membership, cco.us/club. Either way, and I can get you some resources. So now that they've done the investigation and how they fix that, brilliant, right? Here are the links, one to the OIG main page. The second one is to the work plan and the reports. Um, Sarah's right. She says, I think they use the racks. They absolutely do use the racks. And Michelle says, will CCO offer a CPCO course? And does CCO still have the CPMA? We've got a new course coming out, an advanced coding course that would care of those. We'll be announcing that soon. So, Michelle, stay tuned for that. If you have a topic that you'd like for us to work on for you and do a webinar like this, real easy to let us know. Do use this link, the cco.us/topic-request. Also, before we end, I want to just show you what that work plan looks like. I got it. I'm just going to pull it over real quick. I converted it into a Word document so I could pull that information, but this is what it looks like. And you will, this is the fact sheet that I told you about. And when you go in and get this fact sheet, then it has the hyperlinks to the work plan, the website, and how to get a hold of them. I would really encourage you to do that. Become familiar with them. Here is the list of some investigations that were done in March, and you can see the one that I picked because I knew that was heavy in diagnosis coding, and that's my favorite thing to do. How that would be related. Again, you guys, we have a lot of fun doing this, and we want to make sure that you are enjoying your career path. Let us help you research and educate both yourself and the other people in your team by giving us topics that you want us to do. We have fun, and we want you to also have fun. We're passionate about this industry, and I think that you probably realize that. So share, let other people know that we're here to help them. Again, we're getting ready to launch a new course. More information will be coming out real soon. And next week is the key time for that to happen. So thanks for mentioning some of the areas that you would like more information in credentials. I think we'll be able to help you out. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day.
Our online medical coding course was created specifically for beginners to learn everything they need about medical coding. The course includes a personal coach, 9 months of access, 24/7 online videos, transcripts, and exams. You can learn more about our medical coding course at www.cco.us/PBC.